Welcome to the Age Has No Limit podcast. If you're a person who is in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, or older, who was taught to stay in your lane, or maybe you believe your age limits you from pursuing new adventures, exploring new destinations, or that business idea you've been nursing, I invite you to stay and listen to the Age Has No Limit podcast. I'm Patrice Davis, and I'm the host of the podcast. I'm a mom of three, the CEO of Can SOAR Consulting, and the founder of Ready, Set, Go Consult, a consulting business accelerator. I started a consulting business at 49, traveled to multiple countries, found the courage to love again, and I'm just getting started. Each week, I highlight ways you can live on your own terms, share tips on how to start or grow a business, and I feature guests who chose to redefine their lives and live outside the box in their own way. If this sounds like something you'll enjoy, stick around for this episode. If you're listening to us on your favorite streaming platform, please download this or any of our past episodes so you can listen on the go. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. It's the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're here to show and prove that your age shouldn't prevent you from designing and living the life you want. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. Let's get started. As with all our guests, I'm looking forward to my conversation with Andrea C. McLean. So Andrea is a board-certified life, career, and executive coach and author. She is passionate about empowering women to transform their lives and design their futures, and that is right up my alley. She has a deep understanding of personal power, and she guides her clients towards their authentic selves. And she's able to witness incredible transformations and mindset shifts. She helps her clients navigate cultural integration, and definitely want to ask about that. And of course, she wants them to make sure she's also maintaining their sense of self. Her coaching philosophy rejects cookie cutter approaches, emphasizes individual strengths and authentic living, and she believes that true success lies in self-acceptance and leveraging personal gifts to impact the world positively. Andrea encourages clients to shed limiting beliefs and external expectations. That is so important. There's so much to unpack. And she likes to, of course, foster clarity of vision and making sure that they embrace change so that they can fulfill their lives and, of course, their careers. Andrea, welcome to the Age Has No Limit podcast.
Thank you so much, Patrice. It's just a pleasure to be here today and to meet with you.
Thank you. Andrea, what is one standout fact about you that you think the audience should know?
I think one standout fact, I know, is that I am a really great listener. And I've had people tell me that throughout my life, throughout my career. And I don't only listen to what you're saying with your words, but I listen with all my senses in the sense of, I listen with your body language, with your tone, with your emotions. And I also listen for what you're not saying, because that can also be very revealing.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And a lot of times we're not even aware of the things that we're communicating that may be opposite to what's coming out of our mouth. And the fact that sounds like that's a natural talent for you, not something that you developed, you took the time to develop.
No, I don't think it's something I took time to develop. I think I've always been that way. I've always been the person, even as a teenager growing up, going to college, that my friends would come to share their concerns, their dilemmas. I would help them problem solve at times. So I think it's just innate to who I am.
Yeah, which is fantastic, especially for your new career. Now, in your former career, you led global teams, I'm assuming in a corporate space. Tell us a little bit about what you did and exactly what made you decide to become a life and executive coach. What was it that made you say, I'm going to stop doing this and start doing that?
Yeah, it's kind of things I've added on over time. But what I did in my corporate role, I worked in the food, financial services, and beauty industries. And I led teams that were primarily in the customer care space. So I did a startup for a customer care center for the Americas, but then went on to have teams that did communications, that did analytics. And then most recently, my last role was I led a global compliance center of excellence and made sure that all of our protocols and practices as far as regulatory and privacy compliance requirements were being met as we were engaging with our consumers. And so it was a very scientific role. I have a chemistry undergrad, so it was a very scientific role. But then along the way, I had been coaching, as I mentioned, throughout my career. And what struck me one day was when I was talking with a woman I was mentoring and coaching within the company, because I ultimately also became an internal executive coach. And while I sat there and I was just talking to her, it almost like I had an out of body experience. I don't know how to describe it, but it just felt like this is what you're supposed to be doing. And that was laddered on top of a few years before when I did a Gallup Strengths Finder exercise, and the coach who facilitated my debrief said to me, based on your profile, I think you'd make a great coach. Why don't you come think about working for Gallup? And I kind of parked it in my head as, no. But when I had that aha moment, and then a second aha moment at work was when a new colleague joined, and he had come from a very different cultural environment in terms of corporate culture. And he just said to me, I need you to coach me. And I was walking him through the culture of our company, how he needed to engage with others, that there was a certain tone and expectation of having a high touch with everyone you dealt with. And he said to me one day, before I go in a meeting, I think, what would Andrea do? and that it just kind of all brought it together. And then I wanted to move up in my career, and I was working towards a promotion. I didn't get the promotion. And then I said, I need to take my own career into my own hands. And that's when I really seriously started the journey, went back in my 50s to do my master's in organizational leadership, developing people and organizations, did my coaching certifications, or at least started the first one, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah. There's so much to follow up on that. And so I'm going to follow up on at least 4 of those things.
Okay.
So number one, interesting that you worked in so many different industries. That says a lot about one's adaptability, and the fact that not just adaptability, the ability to succeed in different environments. Also, I heard you say something about compliance. Sounds like, but I don't know if compliance is what I also do.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a certain mindset and just willingness to quote unquote do what's right when you have compliance and adhering to protocols as your responsibility.
Yes.
The third thing is I heard you say that you are, and you shared this also, you are board certified. Tell us, what is the certification institute, so to speak, or institution, and exactly what is your certification in?
Sure. So the boards, I have a few certifications, but the board certification specifically, it's from the Center for Credentialing and Education, and they certify coaches as well as mental health therapists and counselors as well. So you have to go through a program of a number of hours of training. If I remember, I think it's like 60 hours of training, and I had to do coaching exercises as demonstrations for my instructor, and I did it through a university. And then at the end of that, I got the certificate from the university, but I had to sit for the board certified coaching exam. And that's what I did, and I passed, and that's how I got certified. And every 5 years, I have to make sure I keep my continuing education going so that I can continue to maintain my certification as a board certified coach.
Excellent. So what I like about that, Andrea, is that number one, you actually went and got the certification. You have continuing ed that you have to continue to, I'll use the word stay on top of or keep. And so for those of you out there, please listen to just some of the education and effort and credibility that she brings to her practice. And please consider that when you're looking for a coach, people who have actually spent the time looking into ways that they can take their natural talents. In this case, it was Andrea's natural talents, and then I would say layer on top of it, the learnings and the practice, and of course the certification to be able to help people like you. I also heard you say that you were an internal executive coach. It sounds like you were either hired or selected or something internally to serve as an executive coach in one of the organizations where you worked. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So in my last company in the beauty industry, I actually was the co-chair of the Women's Leadership Network for the North America region. And I had met a woman, I myself had gone through a mentorship and sponsorship program, and I had met a woman at her graduation who was an external speaker at the time, who had joined our company. And there was a new effort for a women's leadership initiative. They needed coaches. And so I reached out to her. Again, it wasn't even for, I'm raising my hand to coach. I just wanted to know if she had some information I needed for my Women's Leadership Network. And then as we rekindled the connection that we had had from 3 years prior, and I did a bio and I shared that I had gone through and done my master's and my 3 coaching certifications. And she's like, wait a second, we need some coaches. So she enlisted me to coach in this women's leadership program. And I coached women primarily in Europe and the UK on their presence, believing in themselves, having confidence. And I, really got rave reviews. I was just so pleasantly thrilled to hear some of the emails that were sent to her about the experience that these women had coaching with me. So that's how I became an internal executive coach as well, in addition to my full-time day job.
Yes, yes. Guys, I have some questions here for Andrea, but she won't let me get to my questions because she just keeps revealing more and more things that I want to dig into. I really would love to know anything that you may have noticed, and these are generalities, of course, differences between some of the challenges, or maybe there aren't any differences between the challenges that women in the UK versus the EU versus the US, any differences in the way maybe they perceive work or the way that they absorb or don't absorb, the stressors from work. Just would love to get your thoughts about anything that you may have noticed.
Well, the one thing that is different is that in Europe, people don't, there's a saying that in America, we live to work, and in other places in the world, they work to live.
Yes.
So the one thing is there's more of a balance in their life. I find for, UK and European women, but confidence or lack thereof is universal. Believing in myself, being able to speak up when I'm in a meeting and share my thoughts, that is universal. And some of the women were also of different cultures, even though they were living in Europe. And when you're growing up in a culture, and I'm from the Caribbean, so I could relate in many ways, and you're taught that you need to respect those who are more senior than you need to listen before you speak what you have to say. Sometimes that doesn't work in every situation. And so some of the coaching I had to do was, you've got to tell your story. You've got to say what you bring to the table, what your value is. And it's not bragging, it's informing. And that was just based on a paradigm shift I had to make for myself as well, because I never wanted to be a braggart. I never wanted to seem like I'm the one saying, well, look at me, here's all the stuff I've done. But if you don't tell people, they won't know. So when you reframe it as informing, it makes a difference, and that's a mental shift.
Yes, that's an excellent point. So you mentioned the Caribbean. So tell us, where you're from, and once, after you tell us where you're from, share your favorite memory about your childhood or from your childhood.
From childhood, oh God, I have quite a few, but so I'm originally from Jamaica, the island of Jamaica, I should say. And I grew up in a family where we had a lot of cousins that were in our generation, and I had professional parents. And so that gave me opportunity to travel and do other things. But one of the favorite memories I always had was holidays or Boxing Day, as we celebrated in Jamaica the day after Christmas, going to different homes every year and getting to see all the extended family and grandparents and just having a wonderful meal. And that for me was just a memory. And we still, we stay in touch. And we had a reunion in 2018. It was 75 people across 4 or 5 generations, as I remember. So we're pretty close-knit family. And for me, that is one of the best memories of my childhood.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And so Andrea and I have already connected and kind of chuckled a little bit about the fact that we're both from Jamaica. I haven't had a chance yet to find out what parish. I'll find that out after we're done recording.
Yeah.
So you speak about something you call a person's resilience score.
Yes.
So what is your resilience score, if you don't mind sharing that with us, and describe some of the life changes you experienced that strengthened your resilience? Well, why don't you tell us what it is first, and then tell us what your score is and what has actually gotten you to that point where your score is where it is.
Right. Yes. So resilience is the ability to bounce back. But I actually saw Adam Grant wrote an article recently where he said it's not just bouncing back, but it's also how you heal.
Yes. Yes.
So and resilience for me, I actually coined an acronym, and I'm going to read it out of my book because I don't want to, say it the wrong way here. But I have a book, Flap Your Way to Success. And the flap stands for face life's adversities and persevere.
Yes.
And resilience, it's a muscle you can build over time. And my take on resilience, as I write in the book, is recognize that every situation is leading, informing, and educating you to navigating challenging experiences in the future.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Go ahead. No, go right ahead, please. You were going to tell us your score. And
so I was going to tell you my score. Yeah. So I in the quiz that I have online, there are 3 archetypes, if you want to call them that. There's the resilience champion, the resilience warrior, and the resilience novice. I'm the resilience champion. So that's somebody who has learned to be resilient, is able to pick themselves up and move forward no matter what the circumstances might be. Then there's a resilience warrior who is pretty good at it, but could use some strengthening. And then there's the novice who really needs to understand that at times things aren't personal. You've just got to forge forward and make the best of situations.
Yeah. I like that. And so I'm definitely going to take the quiz. So for those of you listening and you'd like to learn more about Andrea and to take that quiz, you can visit her website at Andrea, ANDREA, the letter C, McLean, McLean. I'm going to spell that again for you all. It's ANDREACMCLEAN.com. And there you find out more about her services and her books. And we're going to dig into her books. You can also find Andrea all over the place. So Andrea is on TikTok. Andrea is on YouTube. She's on Facebook. She's on LinkedIn. And then on IG, you can follow her at Andrea C. McLean. So definitely want to check her out. Now, what are your personal beliefs about transparency and vulnerability as a business owner? And specifically, since you're a life and executive coach.
I think that there's a place to be transparent about your experiences. So for me, coaching is not just pulling everything out of the client. You can also ask permission to share your experiences, because depending on the age of the client or their life experience, they might actually benefit from something that you've experienced that you're able to guide them with. So I think you can be transparent that way. And I think you also have to be transparent and vulnerable enough to say if there's a certain expertise that they need to coach or guide them on the part of the journey they're on, that you're not that person. So I think you have to be honest with yourself. Where can you help a client truly? Because as we all know as coaches, not every client is for every coach. So that's where I think there has to be that transparency and vulnerability to make that best relationship, because that's what you're getting into when you have a client. You're building that relationship to make them better for the future.
And do you think it's important to identify with your clients? Obviously, if your clients are experiencing a certain situation or trauma or
Mm-hmm.
something, it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to match them in the trauma. And it
Right.
isn't tit for tat. But how do you identify with your clients? Do you identify with them, and do you think it's important to do that?
I think if again, if you really can't identify, if they're going through something that you really don't have experience with, I think it might be hard to guide them. But on the flip side, you might be an objective party that's
Mm-hmm.
stepping back and saying, have you thought about this?
Mm-hmm.
Or, what would your best day look like? What if
Yeah.
you didn't have this trauma? What would you have become? So
Yeah.
again, I think it really depends on what the client is looking for in that relationship
Mm-hmm.
and how accountable they will be if you're going to share from a different perspective than the experience that they're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Okay. And so part of the reason I asked the question, so
Mhm.
guys, for those of you who don't know, before I meet with a guest and they record an episode, I spend some time digging around trying to find information about them because I don't want to just, speak with them from their bio. I want to kind of dig in. And so I went to your website and I read Andrea's bio and I was like, but I want to know more, Andrea. I want to know more. And so that's one of the reasons why I asked those questions. So, but this is a fantastic opportunity to learn more. So thank you for that. So Andrea, as you all can tell, is also a speaker, a fantastic one, it seems. So tell us what you think has been the speaking engagement, whether it was in your, former corporate career or in your current role as a business owner. What was the most impactful speaking engagement, you think, for the audience specifically?
Yeah, it's funny. When I saw that question, I had to reflect on it. And
Mm-hmm.
it might sound strange, but for me, it was speaking to a group of university young women
Mm-hmm.
who are trying to figure out their next.
Yeah, yeah,
And I remember when I was going through college and trying to figure out what do I do after this?
yeah.
And I didn't have any workshops like that. I
Mm.
didn't have anyone to say, here are some of the options. Because again, coming from the Caribbean, there are only certain options that your parents want you to pursue,
Exactly.
right? So
Mm.
for me, just to see the engagement and the hands being raised and the questions being asked and them
Mhm.
seeking me out after with additional information that they wanted, that for me was so rewarding because I felt like I was making a difference and an impact for the future.
Are you a consultant or coach who spends too much time trying to find the right tools or the right systems for your business? If you're like I was early in my consulting business, I spent a lot of time researching which project management tool I should use, which CRM system, which website building and hosting company, which accounting software, and what other tools are best for my business. I also spent time creating email templates and even contract templates for clients and vendors. Chances are you've either done the same or you're doing the same. My name is Patrice Davis, and I'm the CEO of a consulting firm, Grantsworth. I'm also the owner of Ready, Set, Go Consult, a consulting business accelerator. I'm also the host of the Age Has No Limit podcast. I'm here to tell you about the Ultimate Consultants and Freelancers Starter Kit. The kit is a curated list of tools of the trade, templates, and other resources you'll need to run your business. It even includes the six-figure proposal template that I've used to win 5 and 6-figure engagements. There's also a fluff-free summary of what it takes to build and grow your consulting or coaching business. Here's the thing. On average, consultants, freelancers, and other independent service providers work up to 65 hours per week. I created the kit myself because I know it can help you save time. Save time from hours of research and trial and error. It's what I would have wanted when I started my consulting business in 2020. Here's another thing. You can't grow a successful consulting business when your foundation isn't stable and when your delivery and systems are chaotic and outdated. Click the link below to learn more about the starter kit or visit readysetgoconsult.com/starter kit. you'll be happy you did. As a reminder, if you're listening to us on your favorite streaming platform, download this and any of our past episodes so you can listen on the go. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Now back to the podcast.
So you brought up something that I'd love to explore a little bit more. So again, also being from the Caribbean, what are some things that you think that parents or maybe even academia in the Caribbean should be doing to make sure students, and they probably are already doing this, but from your perspective, what should they start doing or continue doing to make sure that university students have a better understanding of their options, have a better understanding of what to expect after they graduate, especially when you consider the world as it is in 2024, or even some emotional intelligence, basics or fundamentals. What do you think should be a part of every graduating university student's arsenal when it comes to preparing for the world outside of school?
I think it's knowing who they are. What are their strengths? I wish that when I was at university that I would have had an opportunity to do, whether it was Myers-Briggs or Strengths Finders, or actually one that I really love now that I'm certified to coach is Principles U. And it tells you how you like to think, how you interact with others, and what motivates you. So I just believe that knowing who you are, that self-awareness is something that I think is critical, because no matter what industry you're going into or career, knowing who you are and how you're going to engage and how you're going to work with others really can help you to be successful.
Yeah, that is so true, because if you don't know who you are, it's going to be easy to kind of allow yourself to be molded into something that you don't recognize.
Absolutely. And I know early in my career, I did that because I was trying to fit all these different corporate molds that I didn't really know anything about, because my parents weren't in corporate. My mother was an educator and my dad was in public health. So I had to figure out corporate on my own. And so, it would be great if there's that sense of awareness and what to expect after graduating.
So what was it about the corporate experience you think that had you been more self-aware, you would have handled better?
I think I was trying to fit a mold. And partly because I think my leader at the time wanted us to fit a certain mold. But what was interesting is that one day I would see my peers like getting worked up about stuff, and it seemed like that was how you got the attention. And so one day there was something critical happening in my team, and I decided I'm going to take on this persona. And I got real worked up. And my boss looked at me and he's like, "Stop it, please calm down." He's like, "I don't like this version of you. I like you." And then I thought, all these years I've been trying to be somebody that I'm not. Let me just be comfortable in my own skin, because that's where I add value to this organization.
Yeah. I'm sitting and thinking and just kind of feeling, absorbing and thinking about what you're saying, because what I did is what's the word I'm looking for? I put on a really tight mask, and I performed so well that I felt relieved when I left the office and I was able to turn on my reggae, but it's almost like I needed to kind of reconnect with who I believe I truly am. And so that I call it, it's almost a numbing of my personality so that I fit in.
Yes.
And I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore. It took me time.
I know. When you get to that point where you can be comfortable with who you are, I even will tell you another story. I remember I've crisscrossed the country, because of corporate roles, and I was working for a woman in California. And one day I pronounced a word and she corrected me and said, "That's not the American way to pronounce the word."
Wow.
And I was like, okay, so I got to really mold here to fit into this new group, because it was a new team, new group, but it was very eye-opening for me. And so again, you put on this mask to be like others, right?
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of the time when I was in middle school, and I will never forget this. For some reason, it really hit me. I was in middle school in eighth grade, and they were talking about the War of 1812. And I
Mm-hmm.
raised my hand. I said something about the War of 1812, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then my teacher corrected me, and they were like, "No, well, first they were like, what do you mean the war?" And I was like, and then I was like, "Oh, it should be war. You need to close your mouth
Right.
and say war." It's interesting. Yeah, I'll never forget that was for
My
some
word
reason.
was eight versus et.
Oh, yes, that is, yeah. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to adjust, right? And
Right.
well, you won't, you do and you don't, right? It's one of those interesting situations where you try to figure out how much of yourself you're willing to, how much you're willing to accommodate, the larger
Absolutely.
group. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So you are also an author, as I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned before. What was the first book you published, and what really was the inspiration behind that particular book?
Yes, that. So the first book I published was Grace During a Pandemic, and I'll tell the story without getting emotional about that one. But
Mhm.
it was in the midst of the pandemic.
Mhm.
My mother got diagnosed with, at first they thought it was myasthenia gravis, but it could have also been ALS.
Mhm.
And this was a woman who we had just about a year before
Mhm.
celebrated her 90th birthday. We all flew to Florida. I got family flying in from all over the world.
Mhm.
And about 70 of us celebrated. She gave her speech. She was the last one on the dance floor. I
Mhm.
mean, we have videos. And so it was quite a shock to all of a sudden start to see her getting some symptoms that didn't seem like they were,
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
And ultimately, she got diagnosed with this. And, just to watch her decline, and I became her caregiver.
Mhm.
And so for me, the book was more of, it was cathartic.
Mhm.
I didn't realize when I was writing it that I was actually healing myself,
Mhm.
but it's about my journey from this party through the time when, watching the decline, and then how I came out on the other side of it, so to speak.
Mhm.
And, in the book, I say, I don't know what you might be going through, but that, God's grace can get you through
Mhm.
whatever you're facing. So that's why it's titled Grace During a Pandemic, because it was during the pandemic.
Mhm.
It wasn't of COVID or anything, but just having to deal with people coming in and masking and, cleaning up and making sure that she didn't contract COVID
Yeah.
while, she was immunocompromised, if I can say the word.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that
Mm.
was the first book. And then from there, I'm like, enjoyed this.
Mhm.
And just to tell you a funny story, when I
Mhm.
was going to high school in Jamaica,
Mhm.
one of the subjects we had was English composition.
Mhm.
And my mother was an English teacher, mind you, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was my least favorite subject.
Mhm.
And when they would tell you it was a sunny day in the sky, write a 200-word essay.
Yeah.
And I would be like, I don't know what to write, because I like to write about factual things. That was
Yeah.
so I would never say I was a writer. But
Mhm.
then when I was doing my master's, one of my professors said, I think you like to write, Andrea. I said,
Mm.
really? So here
Mhm.
comes this book. And then the second one I did was Girl, What Do You See? Which
Mm.
is a children's book. It's about
Yeah.
a 13-year-old who's trying to figure out what she wants to be when she grows up.
Mm.
And her parents are saying you should become a doctor because you're really good at the sciences, but she loved to bake. And ultimately, that's what she pursued. She went to culinary school after high school. So that was the second one. And from there, I've just kept going.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I, as it's interesting because that was one of the books that really piqued my interest too, was Girl, What Do You See? I was wondering
Mhm.
what it was about. So thank you for sharing that. And your mom is now in,
She's she's gone.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry to hear
Yeah.
that. Yeah, sorry to
Yeah.
hear that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's even more, difficult, but thankfully she had that opportunity to be the last one on that dance floor several years ago.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yes,
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful. And what about Decide to Be Yourself, a journey of transformation? Again, that stuck out because of what I shared earlier about
Mhm.
feeling like I had to numb a part of who I was
Right,
in order to
right.
fit in.
And that book for me is the sort of like the culmination of a lot of experiences over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is when I wrote the Flap Your Way to Success book,
Mm-hmm.
a mentor of mine knew somebody at a publishing house, and she read the manuscript, and she said to me, what really resonated was this one chapter that I had that was called Decide to Be Your Future Self.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, let me make a book about that. If
Mm-hmm.
that's resonating, I think that could be a whole book.
Yeah.
And in there, it's a coaching book with coaching exercises. And I introduced my model SOAR. The
Mm-hmm.
S stands for shift your mindset. The O is for overcome challenges.
Mm-hmm.
The A is for activate a plan. And the R is for reflect and refine.
Yeah.
And so through that model, I share stories, I share quotes that align with the letters in the models. And then I also have coaching questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been, amazed that I've had some people have given it a 4.5. I have a 5-star review.
Wow.
And I actually just won the storybook author award. I think that's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Let me double check here so I tell you the right thing. It's called, Story Trade Book Award.
Oh, okay.
For indie authors for the category of motivation and self-help. And they're going to start publishing that at September 1st, and it will be on my website, etc. So it really, I'm just thrilled that this has resonated.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, I have going to do a series of online courses. Now I'm starting with a small live group first, and then it will become self-paced about designing your future with this SOAR method. So it's kind of brought everything together.
Yeah. And so for those of you who want to learn more again about Andrea, please visit our website, AndreaCMcLean.com, AndreaCMcLean. And of course, you can find her on Instagram. The cool thing is when you go to her website, all of her socials are there. Just scroll down to the footer, or maybe it's in the header as well, but it's on the site. So you can actually connect with her and find her on TikTok and YouTube and many of those other places. So Andrea also has the Designing Futures Academy, as she just mentioned. Andrea, I'd like to find out, now that you have shifted from, your former career to now being an executive, this is your business. You're an executive and life coach. You now have courses, you're creating content. You're now fully extricated from your former career.
Yes.
What does that freedom feel like to you? What's the word you would use to describe? I'm assuming that's the word you would use. Maybe freedom is not the word. Maybe there's another word that you would use to describe the transition, like how you feel in this new role, and tell us why.
I think because I have been building it part-time while I had the corporate role, for me, it's an excitement that I finally have the time to dedicate to doing more, because it felt like I could only go so far because I had a full-time global job, and there are only so many hours in the day. I was really burning the candle at both ends, honestly.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that it was part of laying the foundation. So at some point I could expand.
Yeah.
So there's this excitement, but then there's also the freedom in the sense that I now control my calendar.
Yeah.
I control what I want to pursue or not. And trust me, there are a lot of ideas out there and a lot of people who will engage with me wanting to do XYZ. And now I can choose what it is I want to do so that I can live life the way I want to live life.
Absolutely. And that sounds very similar to my motto, which is to live life on my own terms. I love that. What are some differences, though, that we only have about 2 or 3 questions left, some differences between being an employee and being your own self-employed, and as you said, having that freedom to set your schedule and work with who you want to work with? Any other differences that you noticed?
Absolutely. When you're in a corporate, particularly a large corporate setting, like I've worked in over my career, there are already structures and processes that are established, and when you're in your own space setting up your
Yes.
business,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to establish those workflows and those processes, and it's just a whole different level of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But once I think you get that right,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll be able to scale the business as your business matures. So I would tell everyone, do the legwork at the beginning.
Yes.
Set up your work management tools, whichever one you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
Have your workflows. Know what your brand is,
Mm-hmm.
what you stand for, and make sure that whatever you're doing is aligning with the brand, whether it's visually or you're doing a speech or whatever. It's you've got to think now as an owner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you elevate your brand but stay true to your brand principles?
Yeah, like that. Yes, yes, yes. And that's very similar to something that we really focus on at Ready, Set, Go Consult. So for those of you who don't know, in addition to being the CEO of Grants Works Consulting, I'm also the owner of Ready, Set, Go Consult. And that's where we've developed a entire program to help folks who want to transition from being employees, experienced, experts who now want to become independent consultants. And we do ask that they start with the fundamentals, because you don't want to build a business on a foundation made of sand and it's shaky. You're still, like you said, you haven't figured out exactly what you want to offer, what your brand is. You don't have systems in place. So all of those things are really, really important. And entrepreneurship isn't all the things that we see. It's actually that hard work when the camera's off. The things that you're building behind the scenes is what will help your business grow, in addition to some other things as well.
Absolutely.
So my last three questions for you. Now, tell us about an aha moment or some kind of client experience as you've been operating as a coach full time, or even before you transitioned to full time, that really made you say, you know what, I definitely made the right move.
So I had a client she was actually a nurse, early career, but then she had transitioned into an agency that worked with nurses, and she was now looking for a leadership role. But she really didn't have a good idea of how to navigate this new space, because and I think she was in the emergency area, if I remember well. And so it was, I make all my decisions. I've got to go. I don't need to consult with anybody else. And then she had to learn how to reframe that to, this is a team environment. I'm not the only one making the decisions. There's some protocols to be followed. And it was pretty painful for her to make the transition. But as we walked through, what are the expectations? What would you like to see this become? Is this the right fit for you? She then realized that perhaps she needed to rethink her career. And although she got promoted to a team lead position, she ultimately exited the company and went to do something else. So it's really about, for me, the aha moment is when I see a client that is listening, being accountable, doing their homework if we've assigned homework, and thinking about, where do I really want to go? And am I willing to do the work to get there?
Yeah, yeah, excellent point. And what does an age has no limit life look like to you?
So for me, it means I can do this coaching, book writing thing for as long as I want, as long as it still gives me joy. And I remember my mother used to say age was just a number, but I want to supplement that with age is a mindset.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you're as old as you think you are. And really, she was my inspiration because she did her master's at 60. Well, she graduated with her master's at 60.
Oh, wow.
And she would have gone on to do her PhD if my dad didn't have some health problems and she needed to focus on that. So age has no limit. It's really, do you have the health, the strength, the mental capacity to take on more and do more and dream more and become who you want to be? There shouldn't be a limit.
Absolutely, absolutely. And is there anything, or is there a place where, whether it's a thing you want to do, a place you want to visit, an adventure you want to go on that you haven't done that you'd like to do and that you're willing to share with us?
So one of the things I love to do in my spare time, whenever I have that, I love genealogy, family genealogy. And I remember some of my aunts who are no longer around telling me that our family had started. There were some folks who had come from Scotland. And so I would love to go to Scotland to see if there is truth there and find out the connections. So that's one thing I haven't done yet, but I would love to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yes, a lot of Scots were in Jamaica. And as a matter of fact, in addition to the African side of my family, they're also the Scottish
Right.
side. So yeah, that definitely sounds like there may be some truth to that. It's been wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you.
A lot of follow-up questions and a lot of follow-up thoughts, especially around that resilience number and idea of resilience being pushing through. And I think you said being the ability to push, bounce back, and the ability to, I don't remember what it was, but in my mind, also resilience is the ability to keep moving forward.
Yeah, keep moving forward. Yes.
Yeah, yes. So you brought up some really, really wonderful thoughts and that I would love to explore. Definitely want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So if you can just tell us a little bit about the Designing Your Futures Academy, close us out by telling us about the Academy, telling us what people can expect from either the Academy or working with you one-on-one or in the group approach. I'm not sure if that's the approach that you do as well, and where people can find out more about you.
Yeah, sure, Patrice. So the Designing Futures Academy, today I have 2 courses in there. One is Flap Your Way to Success, and I go through the modules of how to face life's adversities and persevere, and their coaching questions. I have some animation in there as well to make it fun. And then the Girls Can SOAR, similarly, it's about I have another book that I didn't talk about, but I have a book, Girls Can SOAR, which is 12 life habits for the middle school to early college age.
Yeah.
And middle school, I have a daughter. I mean, she's now a young adult, but middle school is a tough time for girls.
Yeah.
And so this is life habits like how to advocate for yourself, how to ask for help, how to stand up for yourself when you need to, how to just really believe in yourself and value who you are and your strengths and your abilities. So the Girls Can SOAR course is based on those 12 life habits, as well with coaching courses for the younger women. And then I'm launching, as I mentioned before, the Designing Your Future with the SOAR method. So that will become part of the Designing Futures Academy. And, we'll create some engagement with some groups. And for the live that I'm kicking off for the Designing Futures with the SOAR method, it will be live. So the participants will get to engage with me as we build it out so it can become more self-paced to scale it. So anybody wants to reach me, AndreaCMcLean.com is the website, and would love to help empower women and girls to become their best authentic selves.
Yes. And Girls Can SOAR sounds like a fantastic gift idea.
Thank you.
Yes. So, and you said that it is a book and it is going to be a complement to the course. I want to confirm that it is also a book. Okay.
It is also a book. Yeah. I'm trying to remember now if I actually did the course first and then wrote the book.
Yeah.
I did it the reverse. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Andrea, the woman who went and got her master's in her 50s, and whose mom went and got her master's in her 60s, wonderful examples of what we're trying to do here. And that is to show more and more examples of people who, prove to us that age has no limit.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Age Has No Limit podcast. Except for when we take quarterly breaks, we release a new episode each week featuring people who decided to live a no-limit life, or featuring tips or lessons learned from me as I create my own no-limit life. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. I look forward to sharing our next episode with you. Just remember, age has no limit.